Time now for all things Gators, all things orange and blue. Dan Hicken, who was at the game, and Frank Frangie. What's up, Hick?
Doing well, Frank. Excited to be here. Excited to be talking Gator football. And thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialists, best in the business, se-ortho.com, for all your orthopedic needs in Jacksonville. Yeah, it was everything you could have hoped for a debut of a opening coach. I think the words that come to mind for me are culture, momentum, and patience. And he's building his culture. He has momentum, and there is no patience in Gator Nation. So right. A win certainly maybe takes that word out of the buzzword Rolodex for this year.
I totally agree, because here's the deal. Everybody, whether we're right or not, everybody felt like all the other stuff has gone well, right? Yeah. All right. The other stuff.
Right.
Just can you win on the field? If you throw in a win against what I think is a really good Utah team, and I don't feel any differently now than I did before the game, you throw in a win on top of everything else, I think that's huge. I think it was I'm kicking myself. I've been kicking myself for 5 days that I wasn't there. I thought about going, but I didn't, and I had a game to call on Touchdown Radio on Monday in Atlanta. But Dan, it had to be magical. For those on the podcast who weren't there, and I'm guessing a lot were, describe the scene for everybody, because it looked on TV and sounded on TV like the Swamp of old.
Well, listen, I mean, again, biased guy here, but there's something special about the Swamp, and there's something really special about the Swamp at night. And you know what I was most proud of, Frank, is that generally speaking, Utah fans said it was what a marvelous college football experience. They got to be a part of something they had never seen. They don't know the intensity of Southern football. They got to see that, in person for the first time, and Gator Nation treated them, by all accounts, most accounts, wonderfully. And I was proud to hear that. Maybe that's just me getting older, as opposed to the old days when, you would just get all over the opposition. And maybe it's because it was a Pac-12 team and not an SEC team. I don't know the reason, but so that was great. But what I harped on all night in being there is that the electricity was back in the Swamp. And that stuff gives me goosebumps even today talking about it. For people who have experienced it, there's nothing like it. And you know what? It was a pleasant night by Florida standards in September. Right. But there was a nice breeze in the open press box. But down on the field, where everything is on top of you and that heat stays in on you, you could tell that the humidity was a factor, as the crowd was. And Napier has, said we're all in this together, and the boys and ladies responded.
You made a great point about the Utah fans getting to experience that. We probably take the Swamp for granted,
right?
But really, it's Duke Indoor, man, or Cameron Indoor. It's Cameron Indoor. It's Rupp. It's Pauley Pavilion. It's Lambeau Field. It's Wrigley and Fenway, to people that haven't seen it, and because you've heard. The legend of the Swamp isn't just a Southern thing. It's not just an us thing. The legend of the Swamp is everywhere. Dan, I've talked to broadcasters. I'll see a broadcaster doing a Chargers game or a Chiefs game, and they'll ask about the Swamp and say, hey, I'd like to call a game one day in the Swamp because I hear it's magical. Well, that's pretty cool for me to hear, for us to hear that.
Yeah.
And so it did look like, I'm glad you experienced it Saturday.
When you sit next to a person and you can't hear them, that's tells you the fever pitch that was there, and it was there all night long. I mean, it was, like I said, and again, going into the fourth quarter and the Petty and the We Are the Boys, it's just a great atmosphere to take in a college football game. And I'm glad that the Utah people were able to come and enjoy. They didn't like the ending, but they damn sure almost stole that one too. So nothing too much to hang their heads about. And by the way, shout out to the university, because the Utah football team delayed in getting back, and boy, they were very, very in favor and wonderfully pleased by how the university treated them in terms of setting them up with hotel and food and such for the overnight.
Yeah, very complimentary to the Florida folks. And what I'm told is the same thing that's been out there now. that Scott Strickland and his team really went to work. Once they realized the struggles Utah was having, they really went to work with all the resources.
To them for that.
Yeah. So I say that's cool stuff. We've now done about 4.5 minutes, 5 maybe, and have not said Anthony Richardson's name.
Well, yeah.
That's a record. That'll be a record. Nobody will break that record in the podcast world this year. I can promise you that.
Well, let me say this to you, and you can react. And this is from the world of hyperbole. This is from the world of too fast, too quick.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say this. I said this on television here in Jacksonville this week. I watched a Labor Day weekend football game 9 years ago, Frank, and it was Pitt and Florida State. And I watched the first half, and I said, that quarterback's going to be the first pick taken in the draft.
Right.
Well, I feel the same way about watching Anthony Richardson on Saturday night. Now, I'll say this, at the very least, the scouts will be flocking to Gainesville, FLA this year. But 6'4", 240, an arm second to none, 4'7". There's going to be a lot of intrigue about this young man going forward.
Yeah, let me do your comparisons are cool. And obviously, Dan's talking about Jameis Winston.
Yes.
Now, Jameis Winston's a drop back. I think he was 27 or 28 that night, something like that.
He was unbelievable.
He's a drop back passer who fit the NFL then.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Richardson is not just a drop back passer. He's a very athletic quarterback who also is a good passer, which kind of fits the NFL now.
Correct.
So the league has changed, and he's different than Jameis was. Look, here's what you're hearing. You're hearing Cam Newton, Vince Young, Tim Tebow. Newton, Vince Young, Tim Tebow. Big, strong, fast, dominant, dynamic. And I have tried to resist that, man. I've said, look, he's got to prove that he can do it game in and game out. Can he throw can he complete the short passes? Can he stay healthy? And there's a lot of questions. And I've tried to stop the train of momentum, the overhype. But, man, it's hard not to after that game. That wasn't USF, with all due respect. That wasn't FAU, okay? This was he did this against what I think is a really good Utah team that I think is going to win the Pac-12 again and is going to be in the Rose Bowl again if they're not in the playoff. I think it's a really good team. Cam Rising and the tight end, Keithy, are so good.
Yeah. The
running back is tough and physical. He's an NFL back, man. I think that's a good team. And Anthony Richardson, I said all offensive guys, but Anthony Richardson did that against a good football team.
Mm-hmm.
He was a dynamic playmaker. And look, we've all said this. I think Florida does not have a very good defensive front. I think Florida's got a lot of young players. I don't love Florida's defensive personnel, but I love how Patrick, Tony, those guys got those guys playing hard, man.
Yeah.
That defense was playing hard, Dan. They were about as good as they could be. We need to get to where Des Watson isn't having to play that many plays on defense, a guy like that. But they play hard. And so I was really impressed with the effort, the win. And back to Anthony Richardson, we all said there's holes on this Florida roster. We all know that. Mm-hmm. They didn't recruit well. There's holes on defense. The weapons are okay. They're not great outside, although Ricky Pearsall looks like a player. Certainly Trevor and Etienne looks like a player, but they don't have great weapons. But we all said the one caveat to that adds up to 7 wins is if Anthony Richardson is truly special. Because if he is, that changes the dynamic a little bit. And one game in, Dan, it looks like he really is. What a fun performance that was to watch.
Well, I mean, when you win, it makes you win over a team that you're not sure you're going to beat. It certainly makes you look at the schedule in a different way. You know, there was some talk about Florida coming out of the gates here this first month, and you know, it could be bad. It could be 1-3. It could be now all of a sudden you're thinking, well, you know, Kentucky's a little down. Their ground game is, their running backs are out. They're missing a linebacker. Their offensive line is struggling a little bit. You beat Kentucky, and then you got USF, and then you're going up to Tennessee, where you've had a lot of success. And oh, wait a minute, now I'm 4-0. So it really changes how you look at things. And I want to ask you this question: do you think there's any credence to this statistic? Billy Napier, after beating Utah, has now won 12 consecutive one-score games as a head coach, as opposed to Dan Mullen lost his last 8 straight one-score games.
Interesting.
I wonder if I think that's called attention to detail. It's the program. It's I think, brilliance of Napier to say, we can't stop these guys in the second half. There's 6.5 to go. We're not in any hurry here to go score. If I score here with under 2 to go, I'll take my chances. He said we scored too quickly, but it was a 14-play drive.
Right.
Where, as opposed to, generally speaking, you might be like, we got to get in a drive here and then get the ball back to have one more if we need it. There was no sense of urgency on that last drive, which I think was brilliant on Napier's part.
That's a great. I didn't know the stat, by the way, either with Napier or Mullen. Well, 2 things. Number one, you're well coached and organized, and you're attentive to detail to be good in close games. But I'm gonna tell you something else, Dan. We've been around sports all our life. The guy that makes the 8-foot putt when he has to, the guy that makes the 2 free throws when he has to, the guy that puts the ball in play and doesn't strike out in the bottom of the ninth, that's a guy who plays loose. No matter how good you are, the guys who play loose and not uptight are the ones that are best in endgame situations. And I'm doing that on an individual basis. That's a great stat. I will say this, the way Billy Napier connects with players, he's a real guy. The culture is so good that I would think they would play loose. They would play, they're like, oh my God, they're not, oh my God, what happens if we mess up? What happens if we mess up? Because at the end of the Mullen era, it was like that.
Right.
We've seen a lot of coaching eras where, oh my God, what happens if I mess up? Oh my God, what happens if I mess up? And the guys who have the right culture, their players don't play like that. No, I'm guessing here because I haven't heard the stat until you just said it. But to me, that would sound like a team that plays loose, that trusts the process, that the world isn't going to end. That's a great stat.
Yeah.
And part of it, and I'm talking about the emotional side and the play loose side. The point I think you're making is they're organized, they're detailed, they're well coached, they know what to do. And I think that's true too. What a great stat. I did not know that. Now let's look. At the end of the game,
right?
If I said this about the FSU LSU game too, one play goes a little bit the other way.
Oh, sure,
you lose the game. But Utah's really good. I think that. I mean, this was. I mean, I think that's a really good. I'm not saying they're Alabama, Georgia good,
right?
But they're on that next level. They are. I mean, they went toe to toe with Ohio State, and I think that was such a great win. That's a great stat, by the way. I love the stat. Back to the other thing you said about schedule and Kentucky and Tennessee. I think Kentucky's gotten pretty good. I think Florida should beat Kentucky because it's Florida versus Kentucky, all right? But they're tough and physical. The quarterback has played a lot of football between Penn State and Kentucky, Will Levis. This is another really good test. If they can win this game, and my guess is they're going to now.
Yeah, right.
If they can win this game, they will have. You can't start a season better because you've played against 2 veteran, tough, physical football teams. You didn't used to say that about Kentucky. You do now.
Right.
It would be a great start if they can find a way to win.
Well, and I think this too. And again, this is Saban rubbing off on Napier because, like we all think, Napier watched very closely during his time at Alabama and his time at Clemson, and he didn't go full out rat poison yesterday. But he did say in his press conference, look, just so we're all agreed on one thing, there was a lot of sloppy on that film, and the Gators got to get a lot better if they want to play to the level that we're talking about us playing at. And I thought that was important right off the rip. Let's not get full of ourselves. Let's understand where we're at. And there was a lot of sloppy on the tape, and there's a lot to clean up. Those penalties will drive him nuts because that's the kind of coach that he is. He's not going to put up with it and deal with it. So I thought that was a good tactical move by a guy who, is implementing his plan on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, and maybe you saw this too. I talked to the people over the game. They said, look, as good as Anthony Richardson was, he missed some reads. There were some guys open he didn't see. Now, look, that's always going to happen some, but that's a positive too because there's room for growth even with him. Can you imagine if Anthony Richardson can, on top of everything else, can become a precise, progressing passer to where every throw's on the money? I mean, every read is correct, and he sees every open guy. And no one sees every open guy, but when he sees, you know what I mean? If he sees the ones you expect him to see, if that happens, the sky's the limit for this guy. What did you think of? What did you think of Montrell Johnson, Etienne, Ricky Pearsall, some of the weapons? Well, in person, what would you read on those guys?
I was pleasantly surprised by the running back room. I thought those kids ran hard. Naquan didn't have the numbers the other two had, but that first drive, he was out there making some plays. Right. Etienne is a true freshman in that environment to do what he did. Thank God he fell on the fumble. Yes. As his brother pointed out. Yes. Was terrific. And then Montrell Johnson, who lost a fumble early, to have the wherewithal to come back. And Napier, again, in what I think is great coaching, Etienne fumbles it, he gives the ball right back to Etienne. Johnson fumbles it, he brings them right back in and gives them the football because they lost that one. But the running back room, receivers, look, last drive, Xavier Henderson had a 3rd and 4 that nobody will even notice, but he was not getting a first down, and somehow, some way he did. Great and that point. Was a great play. Pearsall, I love. I can see his role. We can all see it. We need to take the top off a couple times. I'm not sure who that's going to be.
Yeah, and I'm not sure they're on campus yet, to be honest with you. Yeah. I don't think to take the top off receivers on campus yet, and you got to get those guys, because in today's football, you got to have that guy.
Yeah.
Alabama has, 20 years ago, Alabama didn't need that guy to win.
Right.
Now Alabama's got more of that guy than anybody.
For sure.
So the game has changed, and you have to have that guy. But Pearsall's an NFL slot receiver. He'll play in that league. He looks the part. The 2 tight ends I'd like to see more involved. That was surprising.
For sure.
There wasn't much from them. But I think the weapons are limited. And defensively, look, I think Ventrell Miller's a really good player. I think Irvon Dexter is coming on. I think Brenton Cox is a good college pass rusher. But I haven't seen there's a lot there. They're certainly not what Georgia and Alabama and Clemson play with defensively. I saw Clemson on Monday night. I don't know how good they are because they're not very good on offense.
Right.
But that's an NFL defense.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to get to that point at some point. But look, this is a great start. Recruiting, you hear every time you turn around, someone's going to get flipped and someone else is coming. And this, I can't remember after week 1 it feeling this good. Dan Mullen beating Michigan felt good, and Miami felt good but it felt, because of how good it felt before the game.
Right.
Over the summer, the new building and the recruits and the commitments and the 18 of 24 stars, and because of how good, and then to win the game against a really good team in a dramatic fashion when the swamp is rocking and don't back down and Dan Hickens there and people are going crazy. I can't remember it feeling like this early in a long time. I did my show Friday from Spurrier's. I had not been there.
Yeah.
I'm the only guy in America, by the way, that did not. Some guy in Peoria and me, the only two who had never been there. And you could sense it there, Dan. You could sense it in the parking lot. We drove through campus. It's been a long. Gator fans have waited a long. Listen. The Gator fans haven't been super relevant other than 2 years ago. And Dan Mullen had a good team, the team that almost beat Alabama. But other than that, the Gators haven't been super relevant since 2009.
Right.
You think about that, 13 years, there's college students that were 4 years old when that happened, Yeah. So it feels good. It feels relevant. They're ranked 12th. Whether that's too high or not doesn't matter. The fact is the sports writers who can be very cynical sorts have them 12th in the country after one game. Man, it feels great. Really.
It does feel great. Now look forward to Kentucky, and you're right. They got to be careful on Saturday night, and we'll see how the crowd is. And there'll be a lot of interesting, scenarios being played out as we watch that game, but I can't wait. It's one that, you start when good things happen, man. It's like we were saying, like the polls don't matter. Right. But when you ain't ranked, then they do. Because I know Gator fans were coming up to you because they were coming up to me. Where do you think we're going to be ranked? Where do you think we're going to be ranked? That doesn't matter. Yeah. Well, yeah, it does. And 12 was a good number. So
real quick, 2 minutes left. What are the keys this week? What do they have to do to win the game against Kentucky?
Well, I think the defensive backfield is going to get tested by the Levis kid, right? I don't think they're going to be able – man, they are down like 3 running backs.
Correct.
I mean, they're going to their 4th running back. So if he has a big day, then we're in trouble. And the offensive line struggle. We got to get to Levis. We got to hit him. We did not hit Rising at all, except when he ran. I think they got to get some sacks. And I think if the secondary is going to get tested, and they got to be ready. That's the big part on that side of the ball. And then, they just got to, Cam's got to keep putting that ball in the end zone. Every 168 yards, Frank, throwing, but that's their offense. That's what they're going to be. Right.
Yeah, I agree. Got to play from ahead, Dan. That's the biggest key for me this week.
Yeah.
If you're not playing from ahead, you're either going to have to intercept one in the end zone at the end of the game, or a brand new kicker is going to have to make one. I think this is a game got to start well. You're in the swamp. I don't care. It's still the swamp. The swamp is going to breathe life into you. And now you've played a game in the swamp with your crowd behind you. Billy Napier has Anthony Richardson, his first start in the swamp, by the way.
Yeah.
So I now think you got to play from ahead. I hope they're up 14-3, and you think the swamp was loud last week. Get up 14-3, and that place is going to be on fire. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited. Back in the fold. We'll be here weekly now on All Things Gators, and I can't wait for next week. That is All Things Gators. Dan Hicken and Frank Franch.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, se-ortho.com for all your orthopedic needs. Frank, you have a great week.
You too, Hick.
All right, buddy.